My friends, before we speak of techniques, before we touch methods, habits, or rituals, we must confront a single idea so powerful that if you truly accept it, your entire life will be divided into before and after. The idea is this: you are not a wandering creature trapped inside a hostile universe. You are not a desperate beggar petitioning a distant power. You are the operant power in your own world. Everything that has taken shape in your experience has done so through the consent of your consciousness, often silent, often unconscious, yet always precise. To many, that sounds offensive or unfair at first, because we have been trained from childhood to outsource both blame and salvation to the government, to parents, to partners, to the economy, to chance, to karma, to fate, to God as something separate. But I am speaking to the part of you that is tired of that story, the part that suspects there is order behind what you are living, the part that senses there is a law at work. Let us be very clear from the beginning. This is not a comforting fantasy. This is responsibility, the sweetest and most demanding gift you will ever receive. For if your consciousness is the cause, then it is also the key. And once you understand that, you can no longer live like a victim without betraying what you now know. Look at your life with me for a moment, not with guilt, but with honesty. Look at the patterns, the kind of relationships that repeat, the level of money that seems to be your ceiling, the way opportunities appear and disappear, the way you are treated, the chances you do not take, the limits you keep meeting as if they were walls built into reality. Now, ask a harder question. What would I have to be assuming about myself and about life for this to feel normal, predictable, almost expected? Not what do I say I believe, but what does my nervous system believe? What does my inner speech say when I am alone? What emotional atmosphere do I treat as home? That hidden atmosphere is the architect. The silent word that goes out and returns, as event, as person, as closed door, as open door. Everything you call your world is a mirror of that atmosphere, not as punishment, but as faithful law. This is what I mean when I say you are the operant power. The law does not operate you. You operate it through your assumptions. Whether you do so blindly or consciously is the only question. When you begin to understand this, the tone of your inner life must change. You stop asking, why is life doing this to me? And you start asking, from which state of being have I been living? When you are willing to ask that with sincerity, your awakening has begun. To awaken as the operant power is to accept three foundational truths that will guide everything else we explore together. First, that consciousness is the only reality. Not in a poetic sense, but literally, your experienced reality is the expression of what you are conscious of being. Second, that you are always assuming, always defining yourself, always taking a stand somewhere in imagination, and that stand is the seed of conditions. Third, that you possess the God-given capacity to deliberately choose a new state, to occupy it with feeling, to persist in it until it becomes natural, and that when you do, your outer world must reorganize itself to conform. Consider a simple illustration. A man who has always struggled financially tells himself, I am cursed with bad luck, nothing ever works for me, rich people are different, I never catch a break. He does not sit in a dark room chanting these phrases, but this is the emotional conclusion beneath his reactions. He walks into an interview expecting to be overlooked. He sees a chance to invest and immediately assumes loss. He hears of success and silently repeats, people like me never get that. That inner script is his law. Without knowing it, he is faithfully worshipping a state of lack as if it were truth. His reality obeys. Another man, given the same external circumstances, begins to adopt a different inner position. He decides deeply, I am the kind of person opportunities recognize. I am capable, I am guided, I belong in rooms of increase. At first, his senses argue. His bank account mocks him. His past contradicts him. But he continues to return to this new stance until it becomes familiar. He studies, he moves, he speaks in alignment with it. In a short time, others call him lucky. Yet the only real difference is the state he chose to honor. This is not positive thinking as a thin layer over fear. This is a shift in identity. Your world does not respond to random wishes. It responds to the state you inhabit as natural. To awaken the operant power is to stop living from the surface of complaints and move to the root of assumption. Let us go deeper. Many people cling to the belief that they are at the mercy of one desire at a time. They say, first I must fix my finances, then I can think of love. First I must fix my body, then I can think clearly. First I must resolve my past, then I may dare to dream. They imagine the creative power within them to be as limited and linear as their schedule. No wonder they feel exhausted. Yet when you dream at night, your consciousness effortlessly sustains entire worlds. Streets, conversations, weather, characters, plots, all at once. You never complain in the dream. It is too difficult to animate all these details. The same power operates in you now. The idea that your inner creative faculty can only handle one desire while some external agency juggles the rest is superstition. You are not a clerk pushing forms through a narrow system. You are the light that, when switched on, illuminates the entire room in one act. This is why, later in our journey, we will not ask you to chase 10 manifestations separately, but to accept one grand state of being that already includes harmonious finances, health, relationships, purpose, composure, a sovereign self. To be sovereign does not mean loud arrogance. It means quiet ownership of your inner world. Sovereignty begins when you stop negotiating your identity with your circumstances. Listen carefully. Most people live in emotional dependence on what they see. When things go well, they briefly feel powerful. When things go poorly, they say, "This proves I am small." That roller coaster is the life of someone who has forgotten that they are the cause, not the effect. The opening of true power begins the moment you decide, my inner stance is no longer for sale to conditions. I will no longer rent my sense of self to the opinion of others, to temporary numbers, to whether today flatters me. That decision is not a slogan. It is a rearrangement of authority. I am no longer asking the world, "Who am I?" I am telling it. You might say, that sounds inspiring, but how do I live it? How do I move from hearing these words to embodying them? This lecture as a whole is my answer to that question. We will build a practical path. We will speak of daily disciplines, of 3-day transformations, of revision, of emotional detachment, of how to carry a chosen state through ordinary responsibilities. But none of those practices will help you if you leave this opening still believing that power is fundamentally outside you. So let us challenge that belief directly. I want you to recall a moment, however small, where you knew something inwardly before it showed outwardly. A moment where you decided with unusual clarity, I will no longer live this way, or I will take this path, and everything in you aligned with that decision. Often it was not dramatic. Perhaps you walked away from a degrading relationship. Perhaps you finally committed to a study, a craft, a move. Perhaps you adopted an attitude of dignity in your work. Before results appeared, there was a private inner click, a shift from hoping to knowing. That is the operant power in miniature. The world adjusted after. You have already tasted this. What we are doing now is making it conscious, consistent, and complete. The same law that operates in those rare decisive moments operates every day in what you repeatedly assume. Your casual self-descriptions, your internal commentary about people, your quiet expectations about how situations will turn out, all of it is creative. Imagine now a different kind of human being. They wake in the morning with a memory of who they have chosen to be. They no longer rise as the confused sum of yesterday's reactions. They take a brief moment to inhabit, with feeling, the state of a person who is inwardly secure, naturally prosperous, at peace with themselves, clear in purpose, gentle yet unshakable. They go into their day committed to acting from that state, not to earn it, but because they have claimed it. They handle money as one who expects increase. They handle conflict as one who is grounded. They handle love as one who is already whole. They fail sometimes, and in the evening they do not curse themselves. They revise their reactions and restore the chosen identity. Do this long enough, and that person's world becomes almost unrecognizable to those who knew their former state. You might look at such a life and say, they are blessed. I say they are responsible. This image foreshadows where we are going together. We will formalize this way of living. We will show that multiple desires can be held as one fulfilled attitude. We will explore why emotional detachment is essential for true love. We will clarify how divine timing is nothing but the intelligent unfolding of your assumptions. We will train your inner speech for 3 days so thoroughly that your mind itself changes language. We will show you how to focus so that your attention becomes a laser, not a leak. But understand, each of those later sections is a branch. The root is here. You must decide whether you are willing to see yourself as the cause. Awakening the operant power also means retiring certain indulgences that the old self enjoys. The indulgence of blame, the indulgence of always needing one more sign, the indulgence of calling your own creative patterns your enemy. It feels secure to say, I am this way because of them, because of that past, that system, that rejection. It absolves you from effort, but it chains you to repetition. I am not minimizing injustice or pain. I am offering you a way to stop letting them be your unconscious gods. When you claim your power, your past becomes material, not master. You may acknowledge it, feel it, heal it, but you no longer let it define the range of what is possible for you. You become the one who looks at a painful history and says, I see clearly how I have been assuming smallness or unworthiness, and I no longer consent. I choose a different state now. This is terrifying to the part of you that has built an identity around being wronged, yet it is the doorway to everything you say you want. If this sounds harsh, remember the alternative. To keep your pain and your power tangled together so tightly that to release one feels like betraying the other. You are not asked to deny what happened. You are invited to deny its right to dictate who you may be. That is the operant power in action. Let us address another practical concern. Many fear that accepting such power will lead to arrogance or isolation, as if realizing your creative nature means you will ignore others or manipulate them. The truth is the opposite. When you understand that your world is yourself expressed, you stop trying to coerce others because you see that the only lasting change is self-change. You become more responsible in love, not less. You stop begging specific people to behave a certain way, and instead adopt the state of one who is respected, valued, met with honesty. From that state, either the relationship rises to match or it fades, but you are no longer enslaved to controlling another. This inner sovereignty is the foundation of all healthy connection. It is also the antidote to spiritual passivity. Too many use the language of surrender as a mask for fear of choosing. They say, I am waiting to see what happens, pretending it is trust when it is really refusal to assume. The surrendered soul is not the drifting soul. It is the one who boldly assumes alignment with the highest within, then acts, speaks, gives, and receives from that union. To awaken as operant power is to enter that maturity. Now, why is this opening so vital to the rest of our work? Because every technique you hear after this will either be used as a way to chase results while still feeling powerless, or as an expression of your remembered authority. The same practice, from two different identities, produces two different lives. If you attempt composite states, mental diets, 3-day self-talk, revision, detachment, while secretly insisting, I am small and life is bigger than me, you will turn living laws into fragile rituals. You will test them for a moment, panic at appearances, and declare they do not work. Yet if you approach them knowing, my consciousness is the cause, my assumptions are laws to my world, the same practices become instruments in the hands of a rightful ruler. You will persist, not with strain, but with dignity, because you understand you are working from the root. As we close this opening movement, I invite you to make one quiet but radical shift. Stop listening as a spectator. Begin listening as the one being addressed, not as this is interesting information about reality, but as this is the description of my nature. When I say You are the operant power. Let it not pass through you as flattery. Let it confront you. Let it demand an answer. Will you continue to think of yourself as a victim of circumstances, hoping secret knowledge will rescue you while you cling to the old story? Or will you accept that the same imagination that creates worlds in your sleep is creating your days, and that from this moment forward you can no longer claim not to know? Everything that follows in this lecture, every chapter on consciousness, multiple desires, daily practices, emotional freedom, timing, self-talk, focus, is built to serve this choice, to help you live as the sovereign self rather than the scattered self. The door is before you now, in the form of a simple realization. I am no longer merely reacting to my world. I am responsible for it from within. Take that realization not as a line you heard, but as a decision you are making. Once you do, you are ready for the next step, to see clearly how your consciousness, is the only reality, and how every assumption you entertain becomes the architecture of your tomorrow. Now that we have awakened, at least in principle, to the fact that you are the operant power, we must face the next uncompromising pillar of this entire teaching. Consciousness is the only reality, not one reality among many, not an abstract philosophy reserved for mystics, the only reality as it concerns your lived experience. If this truth remains vague, everything that follows will become superstition. You will treat techniques as charms. You will test them from a place of doubt. You will think something outside you is deciding whether your practice is approved or rejected. But if you see clearly that consciousness is primary, that what you are conscious of being is the cause, and what you call life is the effect, then the methods you will learn later become precise tools in your own hands. So let us dig into this with a seriousness that leaves no hiding place for confusion. Look at the structure of your day. You wake in the morning into a familiar world. Your room, your phone, the names and numbers, your work, your responsibilities. It feels stable, solid, given. You say, this is reality. Yet night after night you lay your head down and enter another world entirely. In that world you accept other identities, other locations, other bodies, other rules. While you are in the dream, you do not question its reality. Your heart races at imagined threats. You weep with imagined loss. You laugh at imagined joy. Your body responds, your chemistry obeys. Only when you awaken do you call it just a dream. I tell you, your waking life is constructed by the same power. The difference is only the continuity of your assumptions. You have been trained to give one series of perceptions the label real and another imagined, but in both cases you are experiencing arrangements of consciousness. The outer sequence is not initiating itself. It is following patterns already accepted within. Consciousness is not something happening inside a skull separated from the world. It is the field in which your entire world appears. In practical terms, your relationships, your finances, your health patterns, your opportunities and rejections, the way strangers react to you, the way systems seem to open or resist you, all are organized around the state you occupy in consciousness. Not around what you wish for in passing, but around what you have assumed, deeply and repeatedly, to be true of yourself and of life. This is why two people can stand in the same city, under the same laws, in the same economy, with the same news, and yet live in two different universes. One walks through doors that seem to open at the right time, meets people who assist, learns from challenges, expects meaning. The other meets only delay, disrespect, and confirmation of their worst fears. It is not that one is loved by some external God and the other is cursed. It is that each one is moving within a pattern of self-concept and expectation that consciousness faithfully externalizes. Consciousness does not mock you, it reflects you. This is both the most humbling and most empowering realization you will encounter. Many resist it because they hear it through guilt, as if they are being blamed for every difficulty. That is not the invitation. The invitation is to recognize that if your inner state is the cause, then nothing in the outer has final authority over you. You have access to the level where change is lawful and lasting. To say consciousness is the only reality is to say, The world you touch, see, and measure is secondary. It is the visible picture of your invisible assumptions. It is the echo, not the voice, the shadow, not the substance. If you attack the shadow without adjusting the light, you exhaust yourself. You change jobs, partners, houses, cities, strategies, only to recreate the same emotional story in new forms. Different characters, same script. You may have noticed this in your own life. The same kind of partner in a different body. The same conflict with different managers. The same ceiling at different income levels. The same anxiety, no matter the surroundings. That circular pattern is not proof that reality is fixed. It is proof that assumptions are being left unexamined. Let us make this precise. When we speak of consciousness in this work, we are not talking about abstract theories, but about what you are aware of being. Your sense of I am, clothed in qualities. I am broke. I am unlucky. I am always chosen last. I am insecure. Or, I am capable. I am guided. I am worthy. I am welcome here. These are not harmless phrases. They are living templates. Your nervous system, your perceptions, your behavior, and the responses you elicit from others will bend to match them. You may say one thing with your mouth and live another with your state. The state wins because consciousness is the only reality. This is why repeating words without inner acceptance is hollow. If you say, I am successful, while emotionally insisting you are a fraud, consciousness does not respond to the syllables. It responds to the felt truth you are honoring. When you choose a new assumption and persist in it until it feels natural, you are not lying to yourself. You are selecting a different reality at the level where reality is determined. To make this less theoretical, let me offer you a story that echoes what many have lived. A woman grew up in a home where love was inconsistent and often withdrawn. She learned to assume that she was, at her core, too much and not enough at the same time. Too emotional, not interesting enough, always on the edge of being abandoned. She never wrote this in a journal, but it became her silent conclusion. Years later, she found herself in relationships that repeated this pattern. Partners who were hot and cold, partners who left as soon as she relaxed, jobs where she felt overlooked, friendships where she overgave. She interpreted all of it as proof. See, I am not truly chosen. From the outside, we could say she was unlucky or surrounded by the wrong people. From the level of consciousness, we see something else. She was carrying a state called unworthy of consistent love, and the world, being neutral and lawful, arranged actors and scenarios to mirror that script. When she began this work, she did not start by chasing a new person. She started by facing the painful, stubborn assumption within and daring to replace it. She chose awkwardly at first to inhabit a new state. I am inherently worthy and emotionally safe. I am someone people are glad to stay with. I am easy to love. At first that felt untrue. Everything in her history argued. But she fed this new state daily, not only with words, but with imaginal scenes where someone remained, where she was seen and met without drama, where kindness was normal. She revised old memories, not to erase facts, but to withdraw the crown from the old meaning. As this new state began to feel more natural on the inside, something subtle happened on the outside. Her body language shifted. Her tolerance for ambiguous treatment decreased. She no longer chased. She no longer auditioned. Some relationships fell away quietly. New ones appeared with a different tone. Nothing mystical in the superficial sense. No external being rewarding her. The law simply expressed her new consciousness. Consciousness is the only reality. When you truly grasp this, blame becomes obsolete, and so does begging. You stop bargaining with life as though it were separate. You realize you have been bargaining with your own reflection. This does not mean you control every detail or dominate others. It means you understand that the pattern of your world is inseparable from the pattern of your awareness. You will not use this law to override another person's will like a puppet. That misunderstanding reveals you still think in terms of separation. In truth, the others in your world show up according to your concept of self in relation to them. If you assume, I am disrespected, I am disposable, I must cling, and prove my value, then those who match or feed that script are the ones who remain. When you assume, I am respected, I am valuable, I am seen as an equal, then either the existing dynamics rise to meet that or they dissolve. There is no need for force. The state you occupy selects the version of people and events you encounter. It is crucial you hear this without superstition. We are not saying that children choose abuse or that every harsh event is a conscious choice. We are not assigning moral blame. We are revealing a law at work now, in you, with the power to heal and redirect. If consciousness is primary, then you are not doomed to repeat what was modeled for you. You can become the turning point. You can assume a new state that your lineage has never seen and prove that reality responds to it. This teaching is not for those wanting an excuse to judge others. It is for those ready to take back authorship. In our larger structure, this chapter is the bridge between awakening as operant power and learning to hold multiple desires in one state. Without understanding consciousness as the only reality, you will treat your desires as objects floating out there in a chaotic universe and yourself as someone trying to grab them. Once you understand consciousness as source, you recognize that all your desires are actually states of being calling you. You do not chase them. You accept them in consciousness and let the outer rearrange. The transcript you gave me spoke often of the fourth dimensional world, the realm where all possibilities already exist. Think of it like this. Every version of you, with different outcomes, already exists as a potential state in consciousness. The you who continues the same patterns, the you who breaks them, the you who rises in one area but stays small in another, the you who lives with integrated abundance, love, clarity, and quiet joy. Each is a complete pattern, something like films stored on a reel. Your current life is the section of film you are playing, based on the state you are assuming, but the rest of the reel exists now. When you choose a new assumption and persist in it, you are not creating from nothing in a linear struggle. You are aligning with a different, already existing pattern in consciousness. You prove your choice by feeling it, thinking from it, walking as it, until the world has no option but to reflect it. This is why time is not the ruling factor in manifestation. Time is simply the unfoldment of the state you have chosen. If you accept this, you stop asking, when will it happen, as if the delay is arbitrary. Instead, you ask, what am I being now? Am I loyal to the new state, or do I keep returning to the old one? Because consciousness, as the only reality, means that the so-called waiting period is not empty. It is the season in which you either stabilize or sabotage your chosen assumption. Now let us address a subtle trap. Some, when hearing that consciousness is the only reality, retreat into fantasy and neglect action. Others rush to action while never altering consciousness. Both miss the point. When you occupy a state in consciousness, action is not discarded. It is purified. You act as the expression of the state, not as compensation for the lack of it. For example, a man assumes deeply, I am a capable creator of value. I belong in expanding spaces. From that state, he may study, network, build, try, fail, adjust. These actions are not frantic attempts to prove he is worthy. They are the natural movements of one who already accepts he is. Another man in the state, I am always behind, I must hustle to be enough, might take the same visible actions, but his consciousness will twist the outcomes to confirm his lack. The law is not measuring the volume of effort. It is reflecting the state of being behind the effort. Consciousness is the only reality means that inner alignment is the cause, action is the channel, and results are the shadow. If you skip the cause and worship the shadow, you exhaust yourself rearranging images in the mirror. Notice how this understanding prepares you for everything that follows in the greater script. When we later discuss holding multiple desires as one harmonious state, it will be clear that you are not juggling separate external goals. You are selecting a comprehensive state of consciousness called my fulfilled life, and letting the details follow. When we explore emotional detachment, you will see it is not indifference, but the refusal to let appearances dethrone your chosen state. When we study the 3-day self-talk transformation, you will grasp why those inner words matter. They are not motivational slogans. They are instruments for saturating consciousness with a new reality. When we reach the final sections on focus and conquering the mind, you will see that focus is simply sustained loyalty to the reality of consciousness rather than to the noise of circumstance. Everything hangs on this. The world you know is consciousness made visible. Let me leave you in this segment with a direct challenge, framed in practical language. Take some area of your life where you have been frustrated for a long time. Instead of rehearsing the story yet again, ask yourself, if consciousness is the only reality, what have I been accepting as true of myself here? What identity have I worn? Be unsparing but not cruel. Identify it in a simple sentence. I am the one who is passed over. I am the one who never has enough. I am the one who is chosen only temporarily. Then ask, am I willing to retire this? If you are, do not rush to a dozen affirmations. Form a clear, elevated yet believable new assumption that reflects the sovereign self you are choosing. I am the one opportunities recognize. I am the one for whom provision is natural. I am the one who is consistently valued and kept. Begin to feel the emotional tone of that assumption even lightly. Let it inform how you walk through your day. When contrary appearances come, instead of collapsing, quietly remember, the only true reality is the state I choose to occupy. These conditions are the echo of who I was, not a verdict on who I am now. Hold that line gently, repeatedly. This is not denial of facts. It is refusal to crown them as final. In time, as surely as seed becomes harvest, the outer must conform. For consciousness is not a pleasant idea in this teaching. It is the infrastructure. It is the axis around which all your methods, all your changes, all your so-called miracles turn. Grasp this, and the rest of our journey together will not be a collection of tips, but a cohesive path. From awakening as operant power to understanding consciousness as cause, to assuming a unified, fulfilled state, and then living it out through disciplined imagination, intelligent emotion, refined self-talk, and unwavering focus. Multiple desires as one harmonious state. Having seen that you are the operant power and that consciousness is the only reality, we now correct one of the most damaging errors in how people relate to their desires. It is the belief that they must negotiate with life one wish at a time, one area per year, one breakthrough per decade, as if the power that sustains galaxies must be protected from overload, as if your imagination, through which this same power operates, is so fragile that asking for a whole life aligned is somehow unreasonable. This error does not just limit results, it fractures the self. It makes you live as if your finances are unrelated to your peace, your relationships are unrelated to your self-concept, your health is unrelated to your purpose. You try to manifest money from a consciousness of fear, love from a consciousness of unworthiness, clarity from a consciousness of confusion, and then wonder why your inner world feels like a committee of voices pulling in different directions. Tonight I tell you plainly, you were never meant to manifest like that. Multiple desires are not competing projects. They are facets of one state of being. When understood correctly, the art is not to chase them separately, but to assume a unified, harmonious identity within which they all naturally exist. You are not assembling scraps. You are accepting a complete pattern. You have already glimpsed this truth. Think of moments in your life where, even briefly, you felt deeply aligned. Perhaps you were in meaningful work, surrounded by a few good people, taking better care of your body, and your mind was quieter. You did not say, I am simultaneously manifesting 4 different things right now. You simply felt, I am myself here. That feeling of inner wholeness is the key. The desires were not separate. They were different expressions of one state, a truer you. The work we do in this chapter is to make that state deliberate and stable. Let us begin by exposing the limitation in the old approach. Many sincere seekers organize their desires as a list. Pay off debt, heal my body, attract a partner, grow my business, overcome anxiety, find purpose. They then assign spiritual labor to each line, one visualization for money, another for health, a third for love, another for confidence. They move from technique to technique, never realizing they are telling their subconscious a story. This is complicated. My life is divided. Fulfillment is far away and must be earned in pieces. That story becomes their state. From that fractured state, even their spiritual practice becomes struggle. And because consciousness is the only reality, that sense of struggle shapes events. Their finances shift slightly, but relationships collapse. Their relationships improve, but their health declines. A promotion arrives, but inner emptiness deepens. They begin to suspect that life is a cruel equation. To gain here, you must lose there. Nothing could be further from the truth of your nature. Your deeper self is not trying to bargain parts of you against each other. It is always calling you to a more integrated assumption. To see multiple desires as one harmonious state, we must look from the level of consciousness, not from the map of problems. On the level of consciousness, your desires are not random demands. They are indicators of the state that is natural to you, trying to break through the state you have habitually occupied. When you say, "I want more money," often beneath it is a more honest desire. I want to know I am supported, capable, and free. When you say, "I want a loving partner," beneath it is, I want to know I am worthy, seen, chosen in my wholeness. When you say, "I want health," beneath it is, I want to live as someone whose body and mind are on my side, not my enemy. When you say, "I want purpose," beneath it is, I want to live as someone whose existence matters, who contributes, who is aligned. Do you see the pattern? These desires are converging toward a singular identity. A self who is safe, worthy, capable, connected, and meaningful. That is the composite state. That is the true object of this work. Instead of trying to stick bandages of manifestation on top of a fractured self-concept, we go to the root and assume the state in which your major desires already coexist naturally. How do we do this in a practical, grounded way? First, we must stop thinking of desires as separate items to collect. Imagine a diamond. It has many facets, many angles, but it remains one stone. Your fulfilled life is that diamond. The money, the health, the relationship, the work, the peace are facets. If you stare at one facet obsessively, you forget it belongs to a whole. If you cut the stone into pieces to study it, you destroy its nature. Many are doing exactly that with their consciousness. The correction is to form for yourself one clear inner impression of the you in whom these facets are unified. Not a fantasy superhero, but the most honest and elevated version of yourself that your heart recognizes. Ask quietly, if I were already inwardly secure, emotionally free, wisely prosperous, in healthy connections, using my gifts, how would I move through a simple, ordinary day? Start there. Not with extreme scenes of extravagance, but with believable normalcy. Perhaps in that day you wake up rested in a home that feels like it truly fits you. Your bank account feels stable enough that you are not starting the morning in dread. Your body feels responsive and strong enough to carry you. There is someone in your life, or at least the natural expectation of companionship, that feels safe, not frantic. Your work feels like an arena where you bring value, not a sentence you must endure. You feel guided rather than lost. Notice the tone of that day. Calm confidence, lightness, self-respect, openness. That tone is the essence of your composite state. You may shape an imaginal scene that captures it. Sitting at a table with a trusted friend, speaking in the past tense about how your life has come together, or lying in bed at night with a full, quiet gratitude, not for one miracle, but for the way everything aligns. In this one scene, you touch money, love, health, meaning, peace, without fragmenting them. You are not trying to micromanage physical details. You are claiming the feeling of wholeness. That feeling is what imprints the new state on your subconscious. The transcript you shared speaks of creating a single scene in which you naturally mention your flourishing business, your perfect health, your harmonious relationships, as already established. This is not a storytelling trick. It is a demonstration of law. Consciousness easily sustains multiple fulfilled facts when they are integrated in one identity. Some will ask, but if I combine them, will the universe be confused? Should I not focus on one thing at a time so I do not block the energy? This language reveals that they still imagine the power to be outside themselves, as if some external agency is sorting requests like mail. There is no confusion in consciousness. There is only the state you occupy. The reason you felt less conflict in the imaginary composite scene is because that state is closer to truth. The confusion appears only when you stand in a state of lack and try to bargain from it. When you unify your desire into one end state of being, you are not multiplying demands, you are simplifying alignment. Let me illustrate with 3 short stories. A man came to this teaching obsessed with money. Every meditation was about numbers. Every affirmation was about wealth. Yet in his inner conversations, he spoke of himself as perpetually behind, secretly ashamed, unlovable, unless he could prove financial success. He chased money as a cure for unworthiness. The more he chased, the more strained he became. When he was introduced to the idea of a composite state, he resisted. It felt more practical to just fix the money. But as he applied this deeper approach, something shifted. He stopped framing his desire as "I must be rich" or "I am nothing." He chose a new state. "I am a man of value who lives in steady, increasing supply, contributes meaningfully, and is at ease with himself." In his imaginal acts, money, work, and self-respect appeared together. He felt what it meant to be comfortable in his own skin, to make clear decisions, to enjoy giving, to be relationally present. From that state, he no longer chased reckless fantasies. He built wisely, said no to degrading opportunities, yes to aligned ones. The money came, but it came as an expression of a unified state, not as a nervous prize. Another example, a woman longing for love, who also suffered with her health. She treated them as separate battles, one meditation for the body, another for the partner. Underneath, she held the assumption, "I am fragile, I am too much, I am somehow broken." That state poisoned both areas. When she embraced the concept of multiple desires as one harmonious state, she chose instead, "I am a woman who is safe in her own body, safe in her own heart, and naturally met in that safety." Her imaginal scene was simple. An evening walk, her body strong enough to enjoy it, a partner at her side, the feeling of being at home in herself. One scene, many facets. As she persisted, her choices in food, rest, boundaries, conversation began to rise to match that state. Some people left, new patterns formed. Health improved measurably. Love appeared as fruit, not as medicine. Third, a young man with spiritual aspirations, creative gifts, and constant failure in material life. He secretly held the belief, "If I am spiritual, I must struggle. If I succeed, I betray my soul." So his desires fought each other. His consciousness split. When he was invited to see all his genuine desires as aspects of one higher state, he chose, "I am a man whose inner life is rich, and whose outer life is a clean expression of that richness. I prosper by giving form to what is true in me." In his imaginal act, he saw himself completing meaningful work, being well compensated, using that increase generously, feeling no conflict between spirit and supply. As that unified state sank in, he stopped unconsciously sabotaging himself. Clients who once disappeared began to stay. He said yes to opportunities he would have rejected as too worldly. The apparent conflict was resolved at the level of assumption. This is the power of the composite state. You may hear these stories and ask, what if my desires are inconsistent? What if I want things that clash? This question is valuable because it reveals where honesty is needed. Often what seems like a clash is a mixture of true desire and wounded compensation. One part of you may say, "I want a relationship," while another secretly wants to use a partner to cover a lack of self-worth. One part of you says, "I want wealth," while another seeks wealth only as revenge. Those compensatory motives do clash with a harmonious state because they are not arising from your sovereign self but from your wounded self. When you commit to a unified, elevated identity, some false desires fall away. That is not suppression, it is clarity. You discover what you genuinely want, not to dominate but to express, not to prove but to live freely. True desires never conflict. Any seeming conflict is an invitation to refine your state. Now let us address a subtle but crucial practice. Holding multiple desires as one state does not mean passively daydreaming about a perfect life and waiting for delivery. It means you choose the feeling and identity of the one in whom these conditions are natural, and you measure your responses, choices, and imaginal life against that identity. When you face a decision, you ask, is this consistent with the person I have assumed myself to be? If your composite state is, I am clear, stable, well provided for, in honest relationships, then the offer that requires you to betray your ethics does not match. The relationship that demands you abandon your worth does not match. The habit that destroys your vitality does not match. This is not rigid morality, it is coherence. The unified state becomes a standard. You will find as you live this way that the anxiety of juggling many manifestations dissolves. You are no longer counting, you are being. Any apparent delay in one area is not interpreted as the universe refusing you. You understand that consciousness is reorganizing your world and you hold your state. You will also see why, in the next chapter, we move into daily practices that stabilize that state. Morning consecration, walking in character, financial feeling, nightly revision, identity shift. Those are not random hacks. They are supports for your composite assumption. Before we close this section, I want to give you a direct exercise that aligns with everything in the transcript and the larger script you and I are building. Take 3 of your strongest desires right now. Be honest. Perhaps financial ease, loving partnership, inner calm. Instead of treating them separately, write one sentence that describes the kind of person for whom all 3 are normal. For example, I am a person who lives in relaxed abundance, is deeply loved and loving, and meets life with inner steadiness. Read that sentence slowly until you can feel, even faintly, what it would be like to wake up as that person, not someday, but now. Then build one short imaginal scene that implies this is already true. Maybe you are hosting a simple dinner in a home that reflects your taste, sharing laughter with someone you love, aware in the background that your finances are in order, that you are not pretending, that you feel grounded and authentic. Let it be modest, believable, saturated with the tone of your chosen state. Return to this scene each night in the drowsy state. During the day, when life invites you into your old scattered identity, quietly recall, I have already chosen who I am. From that remembrance, choose one small action consistent with your composite state. Do not obsess over speed, obsess over coherence, because the truth is, your life is never shaped by isolated wishes. It is shaped by the state you inhabit as normal. When you treat multiple desires as one harmonious state, you step into your true design. You stop being a collector of techniques and become what you were meant to be. A unified consciousness, calmly commanding a unified world. From here, we are ready to speak of how to maintain that state daily. That is why the next movement of our journey will give you concrete living pillars. Practices that teach your mind and body to remain faithful to the sovereign self you have now dared to assume. Up to this point, you have accepted 3 uncompromising truths. First, that you are the operant power. Second, that consciousness is the only reality. Third, that your many desires are not enemies fighting for space, but facets of one harmonious state of being. Now the question becomes very simple and very serious. How will you live this? Not think it once, not feel inspired for an hour. Live it in the rhythm of your days. Because if your daily inner life contradicts these truths, then your results will always default to the old state. You will know the law but continue to experience the same limitations. That conflict is agony. The only cure is alignment. And alignment is built in the ordinary hours. That is why we established the 5 pillars of daily inner practice. Not as rituals to please an external power, but as deliberate ways to stabilize the state you have chosen. Each pillar is an expression of everything we have said so far. Each one assumes that you are the cause, that your imagination is creative, that your inner speech is law, that your desires are unified in one identity. Take them as serious instructions, not suggestions to try when you are in the mood. A sovereign self does not wait for a mood. A sovereign self builds a pattern. Pillar 1. The morning consecration. Your day does not begin when you check your phone. Your day begins at the first moment you remember that you exist. In that fragile transition from sleep to waking, you stand at the doorway between the subconscious and the conscious. Most people slam that door shut. They wake, grab their fears, grab their to-do list, grab the news, and rush straight back into yesterday's state. They re-enter the world as the same self they have always assumed, worried, rushed, reactive, small. And the law, being exact, simply replays what belongs to that assumption. You will not live like that any longer. Morning is the throne room of your consciousness, and you must learn to sit on it. The morning consecration is not complicated, but it is non-negotiable. Before you move, before you scroll, before you rehearse your problems, you deliberately return to your chosen composite state. You remember, I am the operant power. Consciousness is the only reality. I am the one in whom my desires are harmoniously fulfilled. Then you feel it, even if only for a minute, not as fantasy, but as identity. Ask yourself in that stillness, if it were already true that I am secure, guided, provided for, loved, clear in purpose, how would I feel entering this day? And you let your body, your breath, your face adjust to that answer. You are not begging for the day to be kind. You are deciding who meets the day. A man once told me he had no time in the morning. Too many responsibilities, children, work. His life ran him. I said, you do not need an hour. You need a decision. He began with 60 conscious seconds. Eyes still closed. He refused to pick up the weight of his old self. Instead, he affirmed quietly, with feeling, I am a calm and capable man. I move through this day as one who is supported, who brings value, who is not at the mercy of circumstance. That small act was his declaration of sovereignty. Over weeks, those seconds grew into a few minutes. His reactions changed. The same problems met a different man. That is the power of consecration. You are not promising perfection. You are choosing your state before the world suggests one for you. You are imprinting consciousness at the point of greatest receptivity. If consciousness is the only reality, then these first impressions matter more than all your frantic worrying at noon. Guard this pillar. The world will compete for it every morning. You must decide which voice sits first. Pillar 2, the walking state. The second pillar is where many fail, because they treat spirituality as an event rather than a way of being. They touch their chosen state in the morning, then abandon it by breakfast. They speak like sovereigns in meditation, then walk like beggars through the day. That split is why nothing seems to move. The walking state means this. You carry your assumption into your movements. You walk, speak, choose, and respond as the person you have claimed to be long before the outer picture has fully rearranged. This is not acting in a shallow theatrical sense. It is refusing to betray your truth under pressure. Ask yourself, if I truly am the one for whom supply is natural, would I spend the day obsessively counting every sign of lack? If I truly am the one who is emotionally secure, would I monitor every glance for rejection? If I truly am the one whose life has meaning, would I talk about myself as if nothing I do matters? The walking state trains your nervous system to match your chosen consciousness. You begin with simple, concrete cues. You adjust your posture, not in vanity, but as a physical agreement with your identity. You slow down your frantic movements. You answer questions without apologizing for existing. You let your tone reflect inner steadiness rather than desperation. When an old reflex rises, you do not hate yourself. You notice it as a relic of the former state and choose again. Persistent small choices in alignment with your state are far more powerful than occasional grand visualizations that you do not live. Consider a woman who had chosen the composite state we described earlier. Relaxed abundance, deep love, inner calm. At work, she had always played the role of the over-accommodating one. terrified to say no. Her mornings changed, but her days did not, until she embraced the walking state. The next time a colleague dumped a task on her with disrespect, her old state screamed, "Say yes or you will be disliked." Her chosen state asked, "Would a woman who is secure and respected automatically accept this?" She breathed, smiled, and said with quiet clarity, "I am unable to take that on." That one act sent a new signal to herself and to her world. The law received a different instruction. The walking state is built in moments like that. You do not need to be dramatic. You need to be consistent. Every day offers you dozens of invitations to either collapse back into the old identity or embody the new one. When you remember that consciousness is the only reality, those invitations become sacred. You are distributing your state through behavior. You are teaching life how to speak to you. Pillar 3, the financial feeling. Money is one of the clearest mirrors of your assumptions, because it is emotionally charged and constantly circulating. Many try to manifest specific amounts while secretly relating to money as an enemy, a judge, or a scarce resource. They affirm wealth while feeling guilty spending, ashamed receiving, resentful of those who have more. That conflict reveals that they do not yet hold a harmonious state. The third pillar, the financial feeling, is not about pretending numbers are different from what they are. It is about transforming the inner relationship so that your composite state can include prosperity without distortion. The key is this: money is not your master. It is an instrument that obeys your consciousness. Your task is to feel yourself as a person for whom support and increase are natural expressions of who you are, rather than improbable exceptions. Start noticing how you feel in simple moments with money. When you pay a bill, do you contract in fear, or can you allow a sense of gratitude that you are participating in circulation? When you see a price, do you collapse into "I could never," or can you choose? Whether or not I purchase this now, I belong in a life where options exist. When you receive, do you minimize it, or can you acknowledge, "This matches who I am becoming"? The man once came to this work drowning in debt and panic. His every encounter with money was laced with shame. I did not tell him to fantasize about luxury cars. I asked him first to adopt a gentler assumption. I am learning to handle money with clarity. I am the kind of man who moves toward order. At the store, instead of cursing prices, he would quietly say, "I am growing into someone for whom these numbers are manageable." When paying a small bill, he would choose 1 second of gratitude. "This means I am participating." Over time, the raw panic dissolved. From that calmer state, he saw possibilities for restructuring, new income, wiser choices that he had been too frozen to see before. The numbers changed because the consciousness changed. For you, as someone now embracing the sovereign self, the financial feeling must align with your composite state. You are not chasing wealth to patch a hole of unworthiness. You are allowing material sufficiency, even abundance, as a natural facet of a whole, generous, grounded identity. This means at every financial touch point, you check the feeling. Is this the vibration of a beggar or a steward, of a victim or a creator? Adjust not by force, but by remembering who you are choosing to be. Over days and weeks, this becomes your new normal. Life then mirrors a person who expects order and increase, rather than a person who expects crisis. Pillar 4, the nightly revision. If morning is the throne room, night is the courtroom where verdicts are set. Most people end their day by rehearsing every perceived failure, replaying every slight, renewing every worry, and then falling asleep under the weight of that state. They do not realize that sleep is the great gateway to the subconscious, and that the last feeling you accept sinks deep and shapes tomorrow's stage. You will use this gate wisely. The fourth pillar, nightly revision, is not about lying to yourself. It is about reclaiming authorship of what your day means before your old state codifies it. As you lie in bed, do not mindlessly scroll until exhaustion. Let that habit end. Instead, look back over your day and search for any scene where you reacted from your former self, not your chosen composite state. Maybe you felt humiliated in a meeting. Maybe you panicked at an expense. Maybe you clung in fear in a relationship conversation. Do not condemn yourself. You are catching echoes. Now, in imagination, gently rewrite those moments as they would appear if you had responded from your sovereign identity. See yourself in that same meeting, speaking calmly and clearly. See yourself responding to the bill with composure and a simple plan. See yourself in that conversation grounded, not begging. Feel it, just enough to let your body relax in the new version. What are you doing? You are withdrawing energy from the old pattern and feeding the new one. You are telling your subconscious, this is the version we keep. A woman who practiced this for 90 days reported that her memory of certain painful exchanges changed. Not that facts vanished, but that her emotional charge dissolved. She no longer carried the identity of the one who was always embarrassed, always overlooked. She carried the identity of someone who learns quickly, stands straight, and moves on. That subtle internal shift began to produce different reactions from others. Remember, consciousness is the only reality. Revision is not childish fantasy. It is the deliberate use of imagination to break the assumed inevitability of your past. You are not at war with what has happened. You are removing its claim to define your future. Before sleep, return also to your composite state as a whole. End the day like this. No matter what I saw today, I remain the one I have chosen to be. Aligned, supported, loved, effective. Let that feeling be the last impression. Sleep in it. In doing so, you are seeding the next day with continuity rather than confusion. Pillar 5. The identity shift. The fifth pillar is not separate from the others. It is the thread that runs through them. Morning consecration, walking state, financial feeling, nightly revision are all aimed at one ultimate outcome, a genuine identity shift. Without this, you are trying to drag new results into an old self. The Lord does not bend that way. Everything we have built so far in this lecture has been leading you to this realization. Your world does not change because you collect techniques. It changes when you become someone else in consciousness and remain faithful to that someone else until the world has no choice but to acknowledge it. The identity shift is not performance. It is surrender of the small, familiar self that was built from fear, injury, and repetition, and acceptance of the larger self that matches your highest knowing. This is not about inflating your ego. It is about aligning with truth. Ego is the voice that clings to limitation and calls it realism. Identity in this sense is the deep assumption of being. When you say, I am, everything that follows must be guarded. In your old state, I am may have been followed by powerless labels, tired, unlucky, too late, too broken. In the new state, I am must be followed by descriptions consistent with the sovereign self, capable, guided, worthy, stable, creative, loved, and loving. At first, this feels like effort, like swimming against a current. That is because your nervous system and environment have long invested in the old story. Do not be discouraged by this resistance. You are not fighting reality. You are replacing a lie. The identity shift becomes real when the new state moves from special practice into default setting. When you catch yourself without trying, thinking, of course I can handle this. Of course I am allowed to be here. Of course things work out for me. When an unexpected bill shows up and your first instinct is not despair but curiosity and confidence. When a relational tension arises and your first instinct is not, I am losing everything, but I can communicate from security. When an opportunity appears and your first instinct is not, I am not ready, but this is consistent with who I am becoming. You will notice this shift most clearly when challenges come. Anyone can parrot high words on a calm day. The true evidence that these 5 pillars are working is that your reflexes begin to align with your chosen state. This does not mean you never feel discomfort. It means the core you return to is different. Your reactions recover more quickly to truth. In the transcript you provided, we saw a powerful pattern, 3 days of transformed self-talk leading to a Sabbath rest in the new assumption. The identity shift is that same pattern extended through your life. There is initiation, where the new state is declared. There is transition, where the new state and old state wrestle for dominance. There is acceptance, where the new state no longer feels like effort. The 5 pillars are your support through all 3 phases. Morning consecration initiates. The walking state carries you through transition. The financial feeling unties knots of fear. Nightly revision removes the hooks of the past. All of it together delivers you into acceptance. And acceptance is where manifestation becomes natural. From this point, the rest of our journey in this lecture becomes deeply practical. Emotional detachment will show you how to protect this identity from clinging to persons and outcomes. Divine timing will show you how to trust the unfoldment of your new state without anxiety. The 3-day self-talk work will sharpen your language so it never betrays your truth. Focus and conquest of the mind will ensure you do not scatter the power you have reclaimed. But hear this clearly before we move on. If you ignore these 5 pillars, you will try to build an extraordinary life on an unchanged self-concept. The structure will not hold. If you honor them quietly and faithfully, your composite state will stabilize. You will not need to chase signs. You will become one. Your very presence in your own life will be the evidence that the sovereign self is no theory, but the living center from which you now create. If these words are awakening something within you, if you feel the quiet, knowing that your reality begins and ends within your consciousness, stay close to this work. Subscribe now. And walk with me as we unfold these laws in depth week by week. Each lesson is crafted to strengthen your inner command and refine your daily practice. Your transformation begins not by watching once, but by returning often until the truth becomes your nature. We now arrive at a point that many fear, many misunderstand, and yet none can skip if they wish to live as the sovereign self. Emotional detachment. Up to this point, you have heard that you are the operant power, that consciousness is the only reality, that your desires are facets of one harmonious state, that there are daily practices by which you stabilize this identity. But without emotional detachment, all of that remains fragile. You will build a magnificent inner structure and hand the keys back to circumstances, to one person's behavior, to one bank balance, to one message on a screen. Then you will say, "See, it does not work for me." It is not the law that has failed you. It is attachment that has stolen your authority. Emotional detachment is not coldness, not numbness, not pretending not to care. It is the disciplined refusal to let anything outside of you dictate who you are and what you know to be true of yourself. It is the inner freedom to love without begging, to give without bleeding out, to engage fully with life without being enslaved by its fluctuations. It is one of the highest expressions of living by the law of assumption, and without it, you will constantly abandon your chosen state at the slightest provocation. So we will take our time here. We will cut through sentimental confusion and go straight to the root, because this is where many secretly lose their power. The starting point is simple. You cannot be sovereign if your emotional center belongs to someone else. If your nervous system sits in their hands, if your self-worth rises and falls on their presence or absence, if your inner weather obeys the market, the notification, the reply, then your true God is not your I am. Your God is the shifting behavior of other humans and the unstable movement of conditions. Emotional detachment is the act of returning that throne to where it belongs, to the conscious self that chooses its state, to the awareness that precedes all appearances, to the I am that you are before you are. I am loved, I am rejected, I am rich, or I am poor. Understand this clearly. We are not demonizing relationships or goals or outcomes. We are exposing a lie you have lived under. When this person treats me right, I will finally feel secure. When this money arrives, I will finally feel safe. When this situation resolves, I will finally trust life. That pattern enslaves you. It reverses the law. The law is not as without, so within. The law is as within, so without. Detachment restores that order. Emotional detachment begins with recognizing the I am within as your primary bond. Before I am anything, I am. Before I am partner, parent, boss, employee, friend, success, or failure, I am awareness, choosing a state. When you begin to taste this directly, even for moments, a strange strength appears. You realize that the feeling of being enough, being whole, being held does not actually come from their call, their attention, their praise. It comes from a quiet willingness to assume that you are already complete at the level of being and to let everything else be an expression, not a requirement. From that recognition, detachment becomes possible. Let us speak plainly about attachment to people. Many are trying to manifest a specific person while secretly believing, unless this one human chooses me in this particular way, I am unworthy, life has no meaning, I am incomplete. That is not love. That is bondage. That is placing your identity on an altar and hoping another will not drop it. When the teaching on imagination, law, and assumption meets that kind of desperation, it is often twisted into obsession. People turn inner work into a technique to get one person to behave against their own nature, rather than into a path to claim their own. That is not what we are doing here. Emotional detachment means you shift from, I must have this person to feel chosen, to I am the one who is inherently chosen in consciousness, who is lovable, safe, and whole. From this state, I can enjoy, welcome, and deepen relationships, but I cannot be owned. When you live from that state, your behavior, standards, and boundaries change. You no longer tolerate crumbs. You no longer chase indifference. You no longer design your entire inner life around their latest mood. And something profound happens. Those who can meet you rise to meet you. Those who cannot fall away. In both cases, you are free, because the axis of your emotional world is not their action but your assumed identity. That is detachment. Not indifference but order, not arrogance but sanity. Now consider attachment to outcomes. You decide to assume a new state, prosperous, healthy, purposeful, secure. You construct a beautiful composite scene. You practice your 5 pillars. Then a bill comes, or you feel a pain, or a client cancels, or a message does not come. Instantly the old emotional storm rises. Panic, doubt, stories of nothing ever works for me. If in that moment you throw away your assumption and enthrone the appearance as truth, you have not yet understood detachment. Emotional detachment to outcomes means you are loyal to your chosen inner reality even while the echo of past assumptions is still showing itself. You fully allow the human sensation of disappointment or fear to pass through, but you do not translate it into a new identity. You do not say, this proves I am still the old me. You say, this is the residue of who I was. I have already chosen differently. You remain in the state of the wish fulfilled and let life rearrange. Detachment is not refusing to feel. It is refusing to surrender authorship when you feel. This distinction is vital. Some people mistake spiritual growth for shutting down. They tell themselves they are detached, while actually dissociating from their own needs and denying their own sorrow. That is not power. That is self-abandonment, dressed as wisdom. True detachment is deeply alive. It allows love, joy, grief, anger, tenderness to move, but it never lets any temporary wave rewrite the core story. I am safe in myself. I am whole. I am the selector of my state. I am larger than any event. That inner stance lets emotions become signals, not dictators. To help you embody this, we can crystallize emotional detachment into 5 living movements that link directly to everything we have built so far. First, recognize the source. When you are triggered, before you blame the person or event, ask, what assumption in me is this touching? Maybe it hits, I am always left, or I am disrespected, or I lose what I love, or I never have enough. The trigger is not random. It is revealing the old contract you are still honoring. Seeing this is not self-blame. It is self-clarity. The moment you see it, you are no longer blindly possessed by it. Second, return to the end. Once you see the old assumption, you gently shift attention to the state you have chosen. You recall the composite self we defined. Secure, guided, worthy, provided for, loving, and loved. You ask, if that were truly me, how would I interpret this moment? Perhaps instead of this proves I am abandoned, it becomes, this is a misalignment I no longer agree to. Instead of this proves money hates me, it becomes, This is a prompt to refine how I create and steward. You are not lying about facts. You are refusing to accept interpretations that contradict your true state. This is detachment from reactive meaning. Third, assume now, not later. Emotional attachment always promises, when it changes, I will relax. When they call, I will breathe. When the number appears, I will rest. Detachment reverses it. I rest now as the one I have chosen to be, and from this rest I allow right forms to come. Later in our script, when we go into divine timing, you will see that this willingness to assume now, in the midst of contradiction, is what bends life toward you. Fourth, release resistance. This sounds gentle, but in practice it is fierce. Resistance is that tight inner fight with what is. This cannot be. This should not be. I cannot stand feeling this. The more you resist, the more you bind yourself to it. Releasing resistance does not mean approving what you dislike. It means dropping the added story that says, because this appears, I am powerless. You feel the feeling in your body without adding the identity on top of it. You let the wave move through your chest, your throat, your belly, while silently remembering, even now I am the awareness in which this passes. Even now I can choose who I am. Many discover that when they stop wrestling the emotion and simply hold it inside the larger knowing of their chosen state, it dissolves much faster. Fifth, cultivate inner stillness. In your transcript, this principle came through clearly. Stillness is not empty. It is the spaciousness where you remember what is real. You do not need an hour on a mountaintop. You can close your eyes for 1 minute at your desk, in your car, in your kitchen, and withdraw attention from the noise. Not run away from life, but step back to see it correctly. You observe the swirl of thoughts and feelings and say, without drama, that is activity and consciousness, not the essence of me. In that stillness, you reconnect with your I am, with your chosen assumption. This is detachment in its purest form. Identification with the stable center rather than the changing forms. Emotional detachment transforms your relationships. When you are no longer trying to force someone to complete you, you become lighter, clearer, more honest. You can say no without guilt. You can say yes without fear. You can let people be who they are and choose what aligns with your state instead of clinging to what attacks it. It also transforms how you use this law. You stop attempting to bend one specific person, one specific job, one specific path to your will, and instead occupy the end state and allow the right people, jobs, paths to reveal themselves as matches. You stop staring at one door that is closing and notice the others opening. Because your emotional body is no longer handcuffed to one storyline, your perception widens. You notice solutions that your attachment was blinding you to. Emotional detachment also protects you from one of the biggest misuses of these teachings, arguing with what is. There is a difference between acknowledging current facts and worshiping them. Attachment worships them. It says this number, this diagnosis, this message, this silence has the final word on who I am and what my future holds. Detachment acknowledges this is what is appearing now as the residue of previous assumptions, but remains loyal to the new state. That is why earlier we spent so much time on consciousness as the only reality and multiple desires as one state. Because now, as you practice detachment, you are not floating in abstraction. You have a concrete inner identity to be loyal to. You are not detaching into emptiness. You are detaching from distortion in order to attach to truth. Let us make it practical with a scenario many will recognize. Imagine you are shifting to the state, I am worthy of mutual, secure, loving partnership. You meet someone, it feels promising. You apply the law. You feel chosen. Then, unexpectedly, they grow distant. The old self surges. Compulsion to chase, to obsessively check messages, to twist your inner work into a spell to drag them back. If you obey that impulse, you abandon your new state and confirm the old one. I am the one who must fight to be kept. Emotional detachment interrupts this. You breathe. You remember, my worth is not on trial. My chosen state did not vanish because one person wavered. From that awareness, you can act cleanly. Maybe you communicate once with clarity. Maybe you give space. Maybe you walk away. But whatever you do it from the knowing that you remain who you decided to be. That position is magnetizing. It may call that person up to meet you. It may call in another who already does. In either case, the law has served you, not your fear. See how this binds with the rest of our script. The operant power takes responsibility for its inner bonds. Consciousness as the only reality means you understand your emotional storms are movements within, not external gods. Multiple desires as one state means you no longer build love that destroys your health or money that destroys your peace. The 5 pillars give you daily scaffolding to live as this integrated being. Emotional detachment and inner freedom are what keep it all from collapsing every time the wind blows. Finally, understand that emotional detachment is not a technique you perform once. It is a maturation of how you relate to life. At first you will practice it intentionally. You will catch yourself reaching for someone to regulate your worth, and you will gently pull that power back. You will see yourself obsess over an outcome, and you will soften your grip. You will feel the urge to dramatize a setback, and you will choose a quieter interpretation. Do this often enough, and something beautiful happens. The gap between trigger and truth grows shorter. You do not stay lost as long. You remember faster. One day you notice that peace is no longer something you chase. It is something you fall back into, because you have stabilized in the state of one who is inwardly free. That inner freedom is not detachment from life. It is the only way to finally be fully in it. To love boldly without terror. To create boldly without desperation. To receive boldly without guilt. To lose things without losing yourself. To walk through this world knowing that nothing you can gain will complete you, and nothing you can lose will erase you, because what you are drawing from is not out there. It is the infinite center of consciousness expressing as you. From this place, the practices that follow in our journey cease to be manipulation and become worship in the highest sense. Loyalty to the truth of who you are. Detach from making any person, any result, any moment your source, and you will discover the paradox. What you release from fear can finally flow to you cleanly. This is emotional detachment. This is inner freedom. And without it, there is no lasting sovereignty. With it, you become untouchable at the level that matters, and therefore more available, more compassionate, and more powerful in every visible way. Divine timing, gestation, and inevitability. By now you have accepted a radical shift in how life operates. You are no longer the frightened creature begging an unstable world to cooperate. You are the operant power. You understand that consciousness is the only reality, that your multiple desires are truly one harmonious state, that your daily inner practices stabilize this identity, and that emotional detachment keeps your throne from being surrendered to people or circumstances. Yet there remains a question that haunts even the sincere student of this law, the question that breeds doubt, urgency, even quiet resentment toward life. If this is true, why is it not here yet? This question, left unanswered, becomes poison. People accept the law in theory, practice it for a short while, then abandon their assumption when the outer world does not contort instantly into their preferred image. They decide the law does not work, or works only for others. They return to worshipping chance. Tonight we end that confusion. To do so, we must understand 3 living principles that are not separate but aspects of one reality: divine timing, gestation, and inevitability. These are not excuses. These are structural truths about how consciousness unfolds into form. When you grasp them, you will stop digging up the seed to check it. You will stop turning every apparent delay into an indictment of yourself. You will stop treating time as your enemy and see it instead as the loyal servant of your assumption. Let us begin with the most confronting idea. Creation is finished. Not finished in the sense that nothing changes, but finished in the sense that every possible state of your life already exists in consciousness. The poor self and the wealthy self, the anxious self and the serene self, the lonely self and the deeply connected self, the resentful self and the forgiving self, all exist as potential patterns. When you assume a state, You are not building it from zero with strain. You are selecting it from the infinite. What you call time is the unfolding of that selection, the movement from invisibility to visibility, from inner fact to outer echo. If you forget this and see only the visible, you will believe that nothing is happening until your senses approve. Then you will live in cycles of enthusiasm and collapse. Divine timing is simply this: the perfect, lawful unfolding of your chosen state in the realm of appearances, according to a pattern that already exists in consciousness. It is not a cosmic personality teasing you. It is the synchronization of your inner selection and the outer stage required to express it. The moment you genuinely assume the state of your wish fulfilled, something begins that cannot be seen with the physical eye at once. We call this gestation. Every living thing carries a gestation period, not as punishment but as order. A seed is no less a tree on the day it is planted than on the day it shades a house. Its nature is fixed. Its expression is unfolding. When a woman conceives, she does not demand to give birth in the same hour. The process that follows is not evidence of absence, it is evidence of certainty. She rearranges her life not because she doubts the child, but because she knows. She eats, plans, rests, as one for whom the unseen reality is already decisive. That is how assumption operates in your world when rightly understood. Once you have truly selected your state, the period between imaginal act and physical manifestation is not a void. It is spiritual gestation. In that gestation, two things are happening. First, life is rearranging itself around your new identity. People, paths, resources, even what you call chance events, are being woven into a bridge of incidents that leads naturally to the outcome that matches your state. Second, you are being calibrated to what you have chosen. Old reactions are exposed so they can be dropped. Old meanings surface so they can be revised. Your nervous system is being taught to feel at home in the new reality. This is not life delaying you. This is life preparing you to keep what you have called in rather than reject it when it arrives. A man who assumes I am a wise steward of great resources must be weaned from the habits and self-sabotage that belong to I am careless with money. A woman who assumes I am beloved and secure, mutual partnership must be freed from the compulsion of chasing those who cannot choose her. If you see these adjustments as attack, you will abandon your state mid-gestation. If you recognize them as part of divine timing, you will cooperate. Here we must address impatience. Impatience is not simply wanting something quickly. Impatience is the hidden assumption, I do not believe this is certain, therefore I obsess over when and how. That obsession is itself a state, and it often contradicts the one you intended to occupy. You say in words, I am now the one who is secure. But your inner atmosphere cries, if it does not show up by Friday, I am doomed. These two cannot stand together. The law does not respond to your calendar. It responds to your dominant assumption. Divine timing is not your schedule. It is the pace at which your selected pattern can express itself through the intricate web of life without violating your own deeper intention. When you fight that, you create turbulence. When you accept it, you move in power. To be clear, divine timing is not a sentence to wait in suffering. It is the invitation to live now from the end, so thoroughly that the unfolding becomes a joy instead of a torment. If creation is finished, then when you assume, you are not waiting for it to become true. You are waiting for it to become visible. That is a very different posture. The gestation period is where most people talk themselves out of inevitability. They plant a seed of wealth, wake up to the same bank balance, and decide their imagination is weak. They plant a seed of love, face one awkward interaction, and decide they are cursed. They plant a seed of purpose, experience one closed door, and decide they are lost. They do not realize that their new state is colliding with remnants of the old pattern, and that these collisions are part of the rearrangement. Here is where understanding inevitability becomes your anchor. Once a state is truly accepted, its manifestation is inevitable. Not maybe, not hopefully, inevitable. Because consciousness cannot be mocked. It must express after its kind. If your experiences seem to contradict your new assumption, you do not say, "This proves it is not working." You say, "This is the last glow of the old fire." You do not rebuild the fire. You let it burn out while tending the new flame. This requires emotional detachment. That is why that chapter came before this one. Without detachment, you will treat every delay as a personal rejection and rush back into the old identity to protect yourself. With detachment, you can witness the interim without surrendering your throne. To make this tangible, let us consider a simple but profound metaphor: the bridge of incidents. Once you have assumed your state, life will construct a series of events that lead you there naturally. You are not responsible for designing the bridge, you are responsible for crossing it. Often, the steps on that bridge do not look like fulfillment. They may look like endings, disruptions, something being stripped away. That is when people panic and cancel their assumption. For example, a man assumes the state: "I am a confident, well-compensated leader in my field, valued for my insight." 2 weeks later, he is unexpectedly laid off. The old self cries, "See, I am cursed. Nothing works. I should never have tried to change." But look from the perspective of law. His previous job environment may have had no structural path for him to embody that new identity. The layoff could be the opening required for his next role, his own venture, or an aligned environment to appear. If he interprets it as a verdict and returns to the state "I am powerless," he will cross a different bridge back into struggle. If he maintains his assumption, uses his 5 pillars, responds as the confident, valued man he is claimed to be, that layoff becomes one plank in the bridge to the very reality he chose. The event is neutral. His state gives it meaning, and that meaning determines which timeline solidifies. Divine timing is at work there. It removed what conflicted with his new state. Gestation is at work, reconfiguring his circumstances. Inevitability remains if he remains. Another example: a woman assumes the state: "I am the embodiment of radiant health and clear self-respect." She begins to rest more, eat differently, speak more honestly, say no to draining dynamics. Suddenly, a long-standing relationship cracks. The other person does not like her boundaries. Painful conversations happen. The old self might say, "If this spiritual work was real, my relationships would be easier." The truth is, her new state cannot coexist with the old pattern of self-betrayal. Divine timing is removing what refuses to align. Gestation is strengthening her sense of self. The inevitability of her health and authenticity is still intact if she will not interpret the friction as failure. In both stories, notice something important. Divine timing is not cruel. It is congruent. It honors the state you have chosen more faithfully than your comfort does. Many of you have been saved by what you called a delay or a loss. You only discovered it later. Our goal is to remove the need for hindsight, to recognize, while it is happening, that the law is exact. A delay is never random. Either it indicates that you have not yet stabilized in your chosen state, and you are wobbling between 2 assumptions, or it is part of the precise unfolding of your already secure result. Both are within your power to influence. If you are wobbling, your work is to recommit, not by frantic repetition, but with quiet, decisive return to the end. Use your morning consecration to remember who you are. Use your walking state to behave as that one. Use your financial feeling, your detachment, your revision, to remove the emotional charge from appearances. You will feel the state settle, and with that, divine timing flows more smoothly. If you are stable in your assumption and delays remain, your work is to respect gestation. There are alignments you cannot see, people you have not yet met, skills you are still anchoring, opportunities being positioned. You would not demand fruit from a tree the week after planting the seed and then condemn the soil. You must grant yourself at least the intelligence you grant the earth, but you say, "How do I know if this is gestation or self-sabotage?" Look to your inner tone. If you are living daily from the old identity of fear and only occasionally visiting your desired state in imagination, that is self-sabotage through inconsistency. If you are living daily aligned with your chosen state, adjusting when you slip, holding your inner conversations in agreement with your end, and something has not yet appeared in form, that is gestation. The answer is not panic, but patience anchored in knowing. Now we must talk about a sensitive idea. Inevitability does not mean passivity. Too many take the phrase, "it is inevitable," and use it to justify inaction, laziness, or avoidance of obvious steps. They confuse trust in timing with neglect of opportunity. That is not this teaching. Once you assume a state, you will be moved. Ideas will come, nudges will arise, conversations will open. The bridge will present steps. Your identity will naturally express itself as action. You are not to sit in a dark room waiting for a knock. You are to live as one for whom this thing is settled, and that one does not procrastinate their own becoming. The difference between forced action and aligned action is simple. Forced action is driven by fear that if I do not fix this now, I am ruined. Aligned action flows from the assumption, I am already the one who succeeds. This step is natural for me. Both may look similar on the outside, but within, one is panic and one is sovereignty. Divine timing uses aligned action as easily as it uses apparent coincidences. It wastes nothing. Inevitability is not an excuse to do nothing. It is the confidence that your sincere, aligned doing is not in vain. Gestation also serves as a purifier of motives. When something does not arrive the instant you start affirming, the immature part of you that wanted it solely for ego display is exposed. That is a gift. You are invited to refine your desire until it harmonizes with your true self. When desire is purified, its manifestation, though it may still unfold over time, carries peace instead of obsession. Many of the 3-day and Sabbath patterns in your earlier transcript point exactly to this revelation, an intense period of inner alignment followed by rest. Rest is the sign you have touched inevitability, not indifference, not giving up, but the quiet recognition. The work is done in consciousness. Now I allow its expression. You can practice this rhythm in any area. Give yourself 3 days of uncompromising inner loyalty to your chosen state. Your self-talk, your imaginal scenes, your feelings, all in agreement. Then, on the 4th day, instead of straining, walk as if it is already settling into place. This is not magic timing, but training. You are teaching your system what faith feels like. Timing becomes divine when it is no longer infected with the poison of frantic deadlines. A final point you must absorb. Divine timing, gestation, and inevitability are never against you. They are you. They are the intelligence of your own deeper being, orchestrating life around the assumptions you have made. If you insist on small, fearful assumptions, that same precision will faithfully express them. If you dare to choose a higher, cleaner, truer state and remain in it, that same precision renders your fulfillment unavoidable. You are not dealing with a moody external power. You are dealing with the uncompromising reflection of your own consciousness. This is good news. It means nothing is arbitrary. It means you can stop torturing yourself with the idea that you have been singled out for delay while others are favored. The only question is, what have you decided is yours, and are you willing to live as if it is? When you unite the truths we have covered, it becomes clear. The operant power chooses. Consciousness, as the only reality, guarantees that choice is causal. The composite state gathers your desires into one identity. The 5 pillars train you to inhabit that identity daily. Emotional detachment prevents you from throwing it away in a moment of fear. Divine timing, gestation, and inevitability are the architecture by which that identity becomes flesh in your world. You do not need to micromanage that architecture. You need to respect it. So the next time your mind is tempted to cry, "Why is it taking so long?" translate that into a higher inquiry. Where am I placing my faith right now? In appearances or in assumption? In panic or in pattern? in the unfinished scene or the completed state, then return again and again to the inner fact. In consciousness, it is done. I walk the bridge. I honor the season. I refuse to contradict my own decree. This steadiness is rare. It is also the difference between those who talk about the law and those who quietly, consistently prove it. The 3-day self-talk revolution. By now you have seen that nothing in your life is random. You are the operant power. Consciousness is the only reality. Your desires are facets of one harmonious state. Your daily practices stabilize that state. Emotional detachment guards it. Divine timing and gestation reveal its inevitable unfolding. Now we come to one of the most precise instruments of creation, and one of the most abused, your self-talk. The way you speak to yourself in the silence is not commentary, it is command. It is the word that frames your world. Most people treat inner dialogue as background noise, a private dumping ground for doubt, complaint, fear, self-attack. They do not understand that this ongoing monologue is the creative decree of their reality. They call it being honest. They call it being realistic. But law does not care what you call it. Law simply takes your sustained inner word as instruction. If you say, I always mess things up, life faithfully supplies scenes where you confirm it. If you say, people never choose me, you will walk into rooms and select evidence that proves you right. If you say, money is stressful, you will experience money as stress, not as punishment, but as reflection. That is why this chapter is not about casual affirmations. It is about a revolution in how you speak to yourself at the level of identity, focused into a concentrated 3-day pattern that rewires your state and sets in motion a new inevitability. The 3-day self-talk revolution is not superstition or a magic superstition window of time. It is a deliberate use of pattern, initiation, stabilization, acceptance, followed by rest. It is designed to align with everything you have already learned in the sovereign self and to give you a concrete, testable way to experience the law. Take it seriously, and it will mark the line in your life between before and after. Ignore it, and your old inner voice will quietly dismantle everything you claim to believe. First, you must understand why self-talk is so powerful. Every image you hold, every feeling you generate, is wrapped in language, even subtle language. Your inner words are the spine of your assumptions. They reveal who you have decided you are. You cannot choose the state I am secure, provided for, chosen, effective, and then walk through the day muttering, I am a mess, I am always behind, no one respects me, without tearing your foundation. That contradiction is why so many see small glimpses of change but nothing lasting. They visit the state in imagination, but live most of their hours in verbal betrayal of it. The 3-day revolution corrects this by requiring total alignment for a short, intense period so that you can feel what it is like when your inner word no longer fights your chosen identity. Once you have felt that, you cannot pretend you are powerless again. We begin by setting the frame. For 3 consecutive days, you will treat your self-talk as sacred. Every sentence you speak to yourself about yourself, your life, your future, is either feeding the old state or the new. There is no neutral. The goal is not forced positivity. The goal is congruence. Your inner language must match your chosen composite state. You are not allowed to plead for what you already are. You are not allowed to insult a self you have declared sovereign. You are not allowed to agree with narratives that contradict the law you have accepted. This is a discipline of love, not repression. It is you finally speaking to yourself as the being you truly are. The pattern of these 3 days follows a divine sequence present in your own transcript. First declaration, then acknowledgement, then gratitude. Let there be, and there is, and it is good. Day 1, you establish. Day 2, you normalize. Day 3, you confirm and rest inwardly. After that, you do not stop the new self-talk, but the revolution has done its work. The new language begins to flow with less effort because it matches a state you have started to embody. Let us unfold each day in detail. Day 1, initiation, the new word. The first day is the hardest. because you are breaking an unconscious habit of years. Your old state will protest. It will present evidence. It will attempt negotiations. Expect this. It is proof that the work you are doing is real. On day one, the instruction is precise. You will speak to yourself only from the end state you have chosen, not about trying to get there, but as one who is already there. If your composite state is, I am a grounded, prosperous, loved, and purposeful person, then your self-talk must sound like the natural thoughts of such a person. Not stiff affirmations, but inner sentences with weight, tone, and familiarity. For example, I handle my responsibilities with clarity. People value being connected with me. I have more than enough resource to move wisely. My life has real meaning, and I show up for it. These are not wishful lines thrown against the wall. They are decisions about how you will be with yourself. The moment you wake, before touching your phone, you begin. You do not plead, please let me become confident. You say, I love how clearly I see myself now. I feel at home in my own skin. When you dress, you do not mutter, I look tired, I look old, it is hopeless. You say, I like the way I present myself. I am growing more aligned every day. When you walk into your work, you do not rehearse dread. You say inwardly, I bring real value here. My presence shifts things for the better. Will the old voice cut in? Yes. When it does, you do not panic. You do not curse yourself. You simply notice that is the former self and replace it with the new word. Not frantically, but firmly. Think of day one as staking your flag. You are telling your subconscious, we do not speak that way about me anymore. A businessman from your transcript, who long believed he was overlooked, began this 3-day practice by changing one inner sentence. Instead of, no one takes me seriously, he adopted, my insight is respected. Every time the old complaint arose, he replaced it. By evening, he was exhausted, not from working harder at his job, but from discovering how relentlessly he had been attacking himself. That awareness alone was a revelation. Day one always reveals the old regime. Do not be discouraged. It needed to be seen. You cannot overthrow a tyrant you refuse to hear. Day two, stabilization, the natural voice of the new self. On the second day, something important happens if you persist. The new self-talk begins to feel slightly less artificial. The old words still attempt to return, but they no longer feel like the only truth. This is the turning point where many fail, because they misinterpret the growing ease as it is just words, or they become careless and drift. Do not. Day two is where you shift from forced statements to natural inner conversations flowing from your state. You are no longer merely declaring disconnected sentences. You are thinking, reacting, interpreting as the new self. If your chosen identity is a healthy person, your self-talk is no longer endless commentary on symptoms. It sounds like, I enjoy how strong my body is becoming. I make choices that support my well-being. When you climb stairs, you do not insult your body. You acknowledge its capacity. If your chosen identity is a loving, secure partner, your inner voice is no longer, I always get abandoned. It sounds like, I am easy to love and I choose people who see that. When a small misunderstanding arises, you do not mentally write a drama. You say to yourself, we communicate. I am safe, even when emotions move. If your chosen identity is an impactful creator or leader, your self-talk is no longer, who am I to do this, but, this is exactly the kind of challenge I am built to handle. On day two, you maintain this from morning to night, but with a softer grip. You are letting it become your normal. Your task is to catch any phrase that carries the air of your old limitations and bring it under the new law. During lunch, instead of silently repeating, I am so behind, you correct to, I always find a way to move what matters forward. On the commute, instead of, I am stuck, you choose, my life is in motion in ways that serve me, even when I cannot yet see it. This is not delusion. It is you assigning a new meaning consistent with your sovereign state. The teacher turned author in your transcript illustrates this well. For years, her inner talk was, "No one will read me. I am not a real writer." For 3 days, she spoke only as the woman whose books are appreciated. On day 2, her self-talk was no longer stiff affirmations but natural reflections. "I like how clearly I express ideas. It feels right to be writing. My words find the people who need them." She did not yet have the outer evidence, but inner resistance began to crumble because the new voice made emotional sense to her deeper self. That is the power of day 2. The revolution shifts from effort to emerging identity. Day 3, acceptance, gratitude, certainty, and the inner Sabbath. By day 3, if you have been faithful, a quiet threshold appears. You will notice that speaking from your chosen state costs less energy than attacking yourself did. The new voice feels familiar, almost obvious. You start to wonder how you ever justified saying the things you used to say. This is crucial. Day 3 is not about pushing harder. It is about sealing. On this day, your self-talk takes the tone of grateful confirmation. You are not trying to become. You are acknowledging that, in consciousness, you have become. Waking up, you might say inwardly, "I appreciate how far I have come in how I see myself. I like being this person." Moving through your tasks, it feels natural to handle things with this clarity and confidence. Facing challenges, "I am glad I no longer crumble inside the way I once did. This is different now." At night, your self-talk is a review from fulfillment. "That was a day lived more in alignment with who I truly am. Tomorrow, even more." This is not pretending everything is perfect. It is recognizing that your inner government has changed. The former ruler has been deposed. The 3 days of revolution culminate not in fireworks but in rest. This is what we might call the inner Sabbath. You stop anxiously checking whether your words are working and begin to take for granted that they do. A man who practiced this with his money identity told me that by the 3rd day his self-talk had shifted from, "I hope this changes," to, "Of course I am the kind of person who brings order to my finances." He still had the same obligations, but he interacted with them without the old shame. That shift rippled into new decisions and opportunities, but the first manifestation was in his tone toward himself. Understand, in the language of the law, that is manifestation. The inner world has changed. The outer must follow. Morning, day, night, the full circuit of self-talk. Within these 3 days, there is a second pattern, how you speak to yourself in the morning, throughout the day, and at night. This structure is powerful beyond measure because it covers the most influential states of consciousness. In the morning, your self-talk is directive. You are setting identity. "This is who I am now." During the day, your self-talk is responsive. You are interpreting events from your chosen identity. "This is how someone like me moves through this." At night, your self-talk is reflective. You are sealing the day in your favor. "I am grateful for the ways I held my state. I know the rest is unfolding." The transcript touched this sequence clearly, and here we deepen it. For 3 days, guard these gates ruthlessly. On waking, never again let your first inner words insult you. During the day, never again let your inner commentary degrade your worth. At night, never again allow your last thoughts to be the prosecution's case against you. Speak as advocate, not accuser. You will be astonished how much torture was self-inflicted by a hostile narrator you believed was truth. Being, having, experiencing, aligning all levels. To make this revolution complete, your new self-talk must touch all 3 levels: being, having, and experiencing. Most people focus only on having. "I have money, I have love, I have success." If those statements are not rooted in a shift of being, they will feel hollow and often trigger resistance. Your inner word must first affirm being. "I am capable, I am worthy, I am clear, I am loved and loving." From there, having becomes congruent. Because of who I am, I have increasing opportunities, I have supportive relationships, I have ideas that work. From there, experiencing flows naturally. I enjoy choosing wisely. I enjoy being treated with respect. I enjoy making and receiving value. All 3 must harmonize. In your 3-day practice, listen for where the chain breaks. If you declare, I have abundance, but your deeper self-talk whispers, I am irresponsible, you will sabotage. The revolution is to bring I am, I have, and I enjoy into agreement. When that happens, your self-talk no longer feels like a performance, but like an honest unveiling of who you decided to be. Objections, tests, and the role of resistance. Now let us be honest about what will arise. During these 3 days, you will face what feel like tests. Circumstances may seem to contradict your new inner language. A bill shows up when you are affirming prosperity. A misunderstanding occurs when you are affirming secure love. A mistake happens when you are affirming competence. This is where the undisciplined mind says, see, my new self-talk is a lie. No. What is happening is that the remnants of the old state are presenting themselves for clearing. Your revolution is flushing them out. They are not evidence to abandon the new word. They are invitations to reinforce it. You respond by maintaining your chosen narrative. Even in this, I remain who I have chosen to be. In this way, self-talk works hand in hand with emotional detachment and divine timing. Detachment ensures that you do not let the event dethrone your new identity. Understanding gestation ensures that you do not demand instant outer confirmation to legitimize your inner shift. Instead, you let your new self-talk be the cause, not the reaction. The Sabbath, after the storm. At the end of the 3 days, there is one more subtle instruction drawn from your base material. Rest. Not collapse, but a conscious release of strain. You have planted a new pattern in the fertile soil of your subconscious. Now do not rip it up by obsessively measuring it. Continue to speak to yourself from your chosen identity, yes, but without desperation. This rest is one of the clearest signs that you have stepped into inevitability. You are no longer using self-talk as a spell to anxiously force outcomes. You are using it as the natural language of who you are. And like any language, once learned, it does not require constant doubt. You do not wake up every morning panicked that you will forget your native tongue. You simply speak. In the same way, as your new self-talk stabilizes, you will notice days passing where you did not have to wrestle every thought. The new narrative played in the background by itself. That is when you know the 3-day revolution has moved from practice to embodiment. Why this section sits at the heart of the sovereign self. This is not an isolated technique. It is the daily expression of all the principles in this script. The Operant Power speaks. Consciousness creates through assumption, and assumption is carried by inner word. The composite state of multiple desires is stabilized by a single, consistent narrative about who you are. The 5 pillars of daily practice are held in place by how you speak to yourself as you move through them. Emotional detachment becomes possible because your inner voice is no longer begging outcomes to reassure it. Divine timing and gestation become livable because your self-talk no longer panics at every gap between seen and unseen. Change the commentary, and you change the climate in which every seed grows. The 3-day self-talk revolution is your opportunity to experience, in a short, defined period, what it feels like to no longer be your own enemy in secret. You will discover very quickly who has been ruling your world, and you will replace that ruler. So I invite you, not casually, but as a solemn experiment in sovereignty, choose a clear composite identity aligned with everything in this teaching. Then, for 3 days, let no sentence you speak to yourself betray it. Morning, day, and night, be fiercely kind, relentlessly congruent, unshakably loyal in your inner words. When the old voice rises, recognize it as the echo of a dethroned regime. Correct it without drama. At the end of those 3 days, notice the shift. Your posture, your decisions, your emotional baseline, the way you interpret small events. These are not minor changes. They are structural. From there, continue. Do not return to casual self-abuse. You have seen too much. You know now that the word you speak in the silence is law. Use it as the sovereign self you are. We now arrive at one of the most decisive thresholds in the entire journey of the sovereign self. You have heard that you are the operant power. You have seen that consciousness is the only reality. You have learned to treat multiple desires as one harmonious state. You have been given daily inner practices to stabilize that state, invited into emotional detachment so that no person or circumstance owns your center, instructed in divine timing and inevitability so that you no longer panic in the gap, and initiated into the 3-day revolution of self-talk so that your inner word finally agrees with your chosen identity. And yet beneath all of this, one faculty quietly determines whether these truths become your living experience or remain beautiful ideas, your focus. What you repeatedly give your attention to, you enthrone. What you habitually dwell on, you invite to harden into fact. The conquest of mind is not about violence against yourself. It is the disciplined reclamation of your attention from everything unworthy of your nature. Without this conquest, the law of assumption is sabotage from within. With it, your reality has no choice but to reform. When I speak of focus, I am not talking about a tight, strained forehead while you stare at a vision board. The focus required of a sovereign being is not tension. It is chosen direction. It is the quiet, unwavering decision about which reality is allowed to live in you. It is the understanding that attention is the channel through which your creative power flows. You do not possess infinite conscious attention for this human experience. Wherever you place it, you are saying to life, "This matters. Make more of this for me." Most do this unconsciously. They feed the very states they wish to escape. They obsess over the problem, replay the offense, study their own unworthiness, monitor what they lack. Then they decorate that habit with occasional moments of positive thinking and wonder why nothing changes. The law has not failed them. Their focus has. To conquer the mind is to reverse that pattern completely. It is to accept that your awareness is not a passive mirror, but an active selector. You are not here to be dragged by every thought, every news headline, every memory, every fear. You are here to decide what you will serve with your sustained attention and what you will starve. This conquest is not cold, not robotic. It is one of the deepest acts of self-respect you will ever perform, because you are finally refusing to lend your creative power to stories that diminish you. Let us be precise. You are always in a state. That state is the sum of your assumptions about yourself and your world. Your focus is what maintains or shifts that state. The law of assumption is simple. What you assume as true, accepted in feeling, expressed through imaginal activity and inner word, will externalize. Focus is how you hold that assumption in place long enough for it to solidify into your three-dimensional world. Without focus, you touch a powerful state for a few seconds, then abandon it for hours of anxiety and complaint. Then you say the technique failed. No. You failed to remain. Focus for the sovereign self has 3 dimensions: what you look at, how you interpret it, and how long you dwell there. All 3 are within your command. Consider your outer world. You cannot control every event, but you can decide whether an event is granted ongoing mental occupancy. Most people rehearse their wounds more passionately than their visions. They replay the insult. They examine the bank statement with emotional devotion. They scroll the lives of others and reinforce their own sense of lack. This is worship. They are worshiping what they do not want. To conquer your mind, you must withdraw this worship. That does not mean denying facts. It means refusing to treat facts as final if they contradict your chosen identity. You see the bill, you respond wisely, but you do not repeat 10 times a day, "I am drowning." You see the silence from someone, you feel the sting, but you do not narrate, "I am unlovable." You notice the current condition and choose to hold your focus on the state in which these conditions are already resolved. That is mental sovereignty in action. Focus is also how you interpret your own inner movement. A thought of fear arises. In the old regime, you grab it, feed it, believe it. In the sovereign regime, you witness it as the voice of an outdated state. You do not collapse into it. You do not fight it with hatred. You simply do not agree. You select again. The story of failure appears. You recognize it as familiar but no longer authoritative. You answer it internally from your new identity. That belongs to who I was, not who I am now. The thought has no power without your focused agreement. This is conquest, not the suppression of thought, but the refusal to identify with everything that crosses your mind. Understand this clearly. Scattered focus is scattered reality. When your attention is divided between contradictory assumptions, you produce turbulence. 1 hour you are the successful, chosen, capable self. The next you are the rejected, doomed, helpless self. Then you declare the law inconsistent. In truth, you were inconsistent, and law obeyed you perfectly. The conquest of mind is the maturing of your focus, so that you stop living as two different beings in one day. Let us integrate this with what you have already learned. When you practiced the 3-day self-talk revolution, you were training focus. You were proving that you can hold a coherent narrative for a defined period. When you learned emotional detachment, you were training focus away from other people's behavior as the dictator of your state. When we spoke of divine timing, we showed that in the gap between assumption and manifestation, your primary work is to maintain focused loyalty to your inner selection rather than spiraling into doubt. All of it points here. Can you keep your mind under loving command, or are you available to every passing fear? Now, let us strip away illusions about what conquering the mind means. It does not mean you never have an intrusive thought again. It means intrusive thoughts no longer have intrusive authority. They appear, they are noticed, and they pass because your focus is already married to a higher state. You are not negotiating with them all day. You have decided. Nor does conquest mean you live in constant strain. Real focus is gentle and exact, like a river directed by solid banks. The strain you feel at first is not from focus itself, but from breaking the addiction to mental chaos. You are dismantling a lifetime habit of indulging every disempowering narrative. Of course there will be resistance. That resistance is proof that you are touching the structure. I want to offer you a clear operational model of this conquest so that it becomes tangible and practical. Think of it as 4 movements of sovereign focus that you can apply to any area of life. First, establish the throne. This is your chosen self-concept, your composite state drawn from earlier in this teaching. For example, I am a calm, clear, creative, prosperous, and deeply loved being who moves through life with purpose. This is not a slogan, it is the inner posture you commit to. Write it if you must, but then live it. Everything in this chapter rests on you having a defined inner identity to which your focus can return. Without that, your mind will conquer you by default because it hates a vacuum. Second, guard the gates. Here you apply focus to perception. Ask throughout the day, does this thought, this inner sentence, this mental picture serve the identity I have enthroned or attack it? If it attacks, it has no right to remain. You do not dramatize the attack. You replace it, not frantically, but with the quiet authority of someone who pays the rent in their own mind. You catch yourself thinking, I always lose, and you answer, no, I am one who learns and advances. You catch, they never choose me, and answer, I am chosen by those aligned with my worth. You catch, this will not work, and answer, my life now follows the pattern of success I have assumed. This is not blind optimism. It is focus aligning every stray movement with your declared state. Third, direct the lens. Focus is not only defensive, it is creative. You must deliberately feed your imagination with the end you have chosen. When your mind is idle, you do not hand it to fear. You hand it to fulfillment. You rehearse short scenes that imply your identity is real, a conversation where someone thanks you for your work, a quiet moment of financial ease, an evening of mutual love, a sense of inner steadiness in the face of past triggers. You feel those moments as now, not as a far future fantasy, but as a present sampling of what is already true in consciousness. This imaginal concentration is not a side exercise. It is how you educate your nervous system to recognize your new state as home. Fourth, hold through contradiction. This is the real test of focus. Anyone can feel powerful for 10 minutes in a quiet room. The conquest is measured when life seems to disagree. A bill arrives, an argument erupts, a plan falls through. In that moment, can you keep your attention primarily on who you are, rather than on the drama of the event? You may feel emotion. Let it move. But beneath it, there must remain a thread of unwavering knowing. Even in this, I remain the one I have chosen to be. It is that thread that carries you across the bridge of incidents into manifestation. Abandon it, and you return to the old world. Hold it, and the event itself is recruited into your good. To ground this, let us walk through a few real-to-life scenarios. A young man has lived years in anxiety about money. His inner talk is, "It is never enough. I am always behind. I am not good with this." He discovers the law and decides to assume the state. "I am a capable steward of growing resources." Focus and conquest of mind for him will look like this. Each morning he claims his identity. Throughout the day, when the old dread arises as he pays a bill, he refuses to spiral into the familiar story. He breathes, answers inwardly, "I handle this. More is on its way. I am changing." He begins to imagine himself checking accounts with calm, making wise moves. He does not wait for a sudden windfall to feel that way. He practices it now. When an unexpected expense appears, the old state shouts, "See, nothing has changed." His conquest is to notice that voice and choose not to follow. To return attention to his identity. "I am still the one who figures this out." Over time, this focused loyalty changes his decisions, his opportunities, his results. The law responds to the new state he maintained. Focus was the bridge. A woman has spent years in self-betrayal in relationships. Her mind is trained on rejection. She assumes a new state. "I am deeply valued, and I reciprocate with clarity and respect." Focus and conquest for her means that when someone shows mixed signals, she does not immediately launch the inner attack, "I am not enough." Instead, she focuses on her worth and interprets behavior from that place. She sets boundaries without hatred. If a dynamic falls away, she refuses to turn it into proof of her unworthiness. She keeps her attention on the truth that anyone who remains must meet her at her new level. That concentration on self-respect eventually reforms the cast of characters in her life. In each case, focus is not used to manipulate others or mechanically force outcomes. It is used to hold steady the inner state from which right people, ideas, and actions flow. Now, there is a trap you must avoid. Do not turn this conquest into self-violence. Some, when they first wake up to the power of focus, begin to attack themselves for every negative thought. They attempt to police the mind with fear. That reverses the work. The sovereign does not panic at every ripple in the court. The sovereign gently but firmly restores order. When an unworthy thought appears, you do not shout at yourself. You recognize it as old conditioning, and you choose again. Love yourself enough to train your focus patiently. Another subtlety. Everything you consume is training your mind. The shows you binge, the conversations you entertain, the accounts you scroll, all are invitations for your focus. The conquest of mind may require you to fast from certain inputs for a time, not because they are inherently evil, but because they constantly feed states that oppose your chosen one. This is not moralism, it is mechanics. You cannot spend 4 hours a day immersing yourself in scarcity, conflict, cynicism, comparison, and then expect to effortlessly assume abundance, harmony, faith, and sufficiency. Guard your intake not from fear, but from understanding. You are shaping the field in which your assumptions grow. As you refine this focus, you will notice something paradoxical and beautiful. Your outer focus actually softens. You become less obsessed with monitoring results, less compelled to control every detail. Why? Because your inner focus is finally anchored. When the root is firm, the branches can sway without snapping. You stop asking every 5 minutes, "Is it here yet?" You know that what you hold within must crystallize without. This relaxed confidence amplifies your signal. It also makes you more pleasant to be around. True conquest of mind never makes you rigid. It makes you steady. you will also find your actions transforming. When your focus is set on a powerful self-concept, you naturally take steps that match it. You send the application you used to avoid. You have the conversation you always delayed. You say no where you used to say yes against yourself. These actions are not forced. They are the natural outflow of a mind no longer sabotaging every movement with counter-assumptions. Focus clears the path for inspired action. In this way, the conquest of mind dissolves the false war between inner work and outer work. The inner directs, the outer expresses. Finally, see how this chapter weaves with the entire fabric of the sovereign self. Focus is how the opening awakening becomes a stable way of being. It is how the recognition that consciousness is the only reality translates into daily choices. It is how the unified state of multiple desires is held without fragmentation. It is how your 5 pillars deepen instead of becoming empty routine. It is how emotional detachment holds when someone pulls away or a plan shifts. It is how you honor divine timing instead of cursing delay. It is how the 3-day self-talk revolution does not fade out on the 4th day. The conquest of mind is the living thread that ties all of it together. So I say to you as directly as I can, your mind is not a wild god to be feared. It is a magnificent servant to be trained. You conquer it not with cruelty but with clarity. Decide who you are. Let your attention serve only that. Revise without drama. Refuse to worship appearances. Immerse your imagination in the end you have chosen. Hold yourself with the dignity of one who knows their inner gaze is law. Do this, and your world must, with unwavering obedience, rearrange itself around the focus of your sovereign mind. To live as the sovereign self is not to adopt a slogan, repeat a phrase, or collect ideas for comfort. It is to cross an invisible threshold and refuse to go back. It is to stand in the quiet recognition that your consciousness is not a spectator of life, but the architect of it. It is to accept, without excuse, that your inner world is the cause, and your outer world the obedient effect. Everything you have received in this journey leads to this moment. This is not the place for another concept. This is the place for a decision. You have been shown that you are the operant power, that your awareness of being is the creative center from which all states emerge. You have seen that consciousness is the only reality, that what you assume and feel as true, consistently, must clothe itself as your experience. You have learned that your many desires are not competing demands, but facets of one unified state of fulfillment. You have been given 5 daily pillars to stabilize that state. You have been invited into emotional detachment so that your peace is no longer held hostage by the moods and movements of others. You have been instructed in divine timing, gestation, and inevitability so that you no longer curse the unseen process. You have been armed with the 3-day self-talk revolution to overthrow the inner tyrant and install a voice consistent with your chosen identity. You have discovered the conquest of mind through focus, reclaiming your attention from fear and scattering. All of this has prepared you for one simple, uncompromising call. Live it, not tomorrow. Not when circumstances improve. Now. Living as the sovereign self begins with a quiet but absolute internal declaration, I will no longer deny my own authorship. That is the first break from the old life. As long as you secretly cherish the belief that life happens to you, that others decide your worth, that chance governs your outcomes, you cannot live this teaching. You can admire it, quote it, share it, but you cannot embody it. The sovereign self does not indulge the luxury of helplessness. This does not mean blaming yourself with cruelty or carrying the past like a burden. It means recognizing that from this moment forward, you hold the pen. Whatever has been, has been. You do not need to relitigate it. You do need to accept that from here, every assumption you permit will be taken seriously by life. That awareness is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to awaken your dignity. To live sovereignly is to take radical responsibility for what you consent to be inwardly. Responsibility, not self-torture. The victim asks, why did this happen to me? The sovereign asks, from which state did this arise and what state do I now choose? The victim replays the injustice. The sovereign revises the meaning. The victim clings to the story that confirms their powerlessness. The sovereign refuses any story that contradicts their nature. This is not denial of pain. It is refusal to make pain your identity. You may acknowledge wounds without enthroning them. You may feel disappointment without declaring yourself doomed. The sovereign self does not pretend everything feels good. The sovereign self insists that no feeling, however intense, has the final word about who they are. You already know the law, what you assume to be true of yourself, accepted with feeling and supported by inner dialogue and imaginal activity, out pictures as your world. To live as the sovereign self is to let that law be the organizing principle of your entire existence, not something you remember in crisis and forget in traffic, not a private mysticism you practice at night while betraying yourself in the day. It must become the standard by which you measure the thoughts you keep, the conversations you tolerate, the reactions you indulge, the way you speak about your life. Ask yourself sincerely, if I truly believed I am the operant power, would I speak the way I have been speaking? Would I describe myself as unlucky, stuck, too late, too broken? Would I repeat, nothing works out for me? Would I feed resentment as if it were nutrition for my soul? Would I diagnose myself with finality as unworthy of love, abundance, or peace? You know the answer. To continue doing so, now that you understand the law, is not ignorance, it is self-betrayal. The sovereign self ends that habit. There is a point where you look at the sentences you have allowed to live in you and you say, no more. Not in my inner kingdom. Living as the sovereign self is intensely practical. It will show up in the smallest, most ordinary moments of your day. When you wake, you no longer roll immediately into dread and mental noise. You anchor. You remember, today I am not a beggar of circumstances, I am the selector of states. Before your feet touch the floor, you return to your chosen identity, the harmonious composite of all your desires, healthy in body, clear in mind, grounded in worth, open in love, effective in purpose, supported in supply. You do not list these as a desperate wish. You inhabit them as a tone. This is who I move as today. Throughout the day, life will present you with invitations to step down from your throne, a message that triggers insecurity, a bill that provokes fear, a silence you interpret as rejection, an old habit that tempts you back into shame. Living as the sovereign self does not mean you never feel the pull. It means you notice the pull and choose differently. In that moment you remember, I have already selected my state. From that remembrance, you regulate your response. You breathe. You choose self-talk that aligns with your identity instead of with your oldest wound. You act from center rather than from panic. That single internal move, repeated across days, is more transformative than 1,000 hours of passive consumption of spiritual content. The sovereign self understands that multiple desires resolve into one being. When you live as that being, your life rearranges itself. You are no longer chasing money in one state, love in another, peace in another. You are no longer fragmenting yourself trying to fix each area from a sense of lack. Instead, you adopt the one state in which all those desires are natural expressions. You are the person for whom thriving is appropriate. You are the person for whom respect is normal. You are the person for whom wise opportunities appear and are recognized. You are the person for whom healthy love is congruent. Living as the sovereign self means refusing to argue against that identity. If you catch yourself insisting, it cannot be that simple for me, see that as the final defense of an old limitation, not as wisdom. Because you now understand emotional detachment, sovereignty also transforms how you relate to others. You no longer build your identity on whether one particular person calls, approves, stays, or understands. You no longer grip relationships from fear. You no longer use other human beings as proof that you exist or as bandages for self-contempt. You recognize that your source is within. From that recognition, you can finally love as a free being, not as a beggar. You can say yes from wholeness and no without cruelty. You can release what does not honor your state, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Some people will fall away when you stop resonating with their version of you. Let them. Do not chase the reflections produced by an identity you have outgrown. The sovereign self does not negotiate their worth to keep access. You also cease worshipping appearances as absolute. Because you understand divine timing and gestation, you no longer interpret every delay or disruption as a cosmic insult. You know that once you have truly assumed a state, the process of outpicturing is inevitable. You know that life may need to reconfigure conditions, close doors that led nowhere, expose beliefs that must break, so that what aligns with your assumption can arrive and endure. This understanding divorces you from the addiction to immediate proof. You do not sit inert. You move, respond, build, express, but you do so from the inner certainty that your consciousness has already cast the pattern. You let time serve you instead of torment you. The 3-day self-talk revolution you have learned is no longer an experiment. As a sovereign self, it becomes your baseline culture. You refuse to be your own abuser in private. You refuse to care for others while speaking death over your own future inside your head. Your inner language becomes an environment of leadership, not hostility. This is not about flattery or delusion. It is about coherence. You cannot embody power while narrating weakness. You cannot stabilize abundance while rehearsing scarcity. You cannot magnetize loyalty while anticipating betrayal. You decide that in your internal world, only speech consistent with your chosen nature is allowed to take root. Do this, and your self-concept becomes unshakable. Focus now becomes your daily weapon and shield. You know that your attention is sovereign currency. You spend it only on what you are willing to multiply. You do not casually donate it to outrage, gossip, envy, or self-pity. You are not naive. You see what is happening in the world, but you refuse to surrender your creative authority to fear. Living as the sovereign self does not mean isolation from reality. It means participation from a higher vantage point. You bring order where you stand because you are not internally in pieces. You bring calm because you are no longer tossed about by suggestion. You bring solutions because your mind is no longer crowded with rehearsed defeat. There is another dimension to this life: humility. Paradoxically, sovereignty without humility degenerates into ego theatrics. That is not this path. Humility here is not self-belittlement. It is the clear recognition that the power you wield as consciousness does not belong to your personality alone. It is life itself operating through you. You are not a frightened human trying to impersonate the divine. You are the divine assuming a human point of view and remembering itself. True humility is aligning with that and using your power lovingly. You stop manifesting from pettiness, revenge, vanity. You stop trying to bend others to your will. You realize that your world is yourself pushed out, so to damage others is to poison your own field. The sovereign self creates realities that honor their nature, which is expansive, generous, intelligent. Now, I want you to see how all of this lands in a very human day. Imagine you wake up tomorrow, committed to living as the sovereign self. Before any thought of rush or lack, you claim your state. You feel, even subtly, I am safe in myself. I am guided from within. I am capable. I am worthy of good. You move into your morning aligned with that tone. During the day, a challenge surfaces. Instead of collapsing, you pause. You remember that your reaction is a creative act. You select a response from the identity you have chosen. Perhaps you speak more clearly than you used to. Perhaps you hold your boundary. Perhaps you take responsibility instead of blaming. Perhaps you choose patience instead of dramatizing catastrophe. That one moment is sovereignty in motion. Later, an old trigger shows up. A message is ignored. A post makes you compare. The familiar sting rises. But this time, you do not let your mind spiral into, I am less, I am late, I am nothing. You watch that old voice like you would watch a character you have retired. You allow the feeling to move through without building a story. Then you return to your inner word. I know who I am. That single inner return is more valuable than reading 20 more teachings. Because in that instant you are practicing, not collecting. At night, you lie down and instead of using the last minutes of your day to condemn yourself, you revise. You look at moments where you dimmed your power and you gently reimagine them in alignment with your sovereign self. You let your subconscious go to sleep with an image of you acting as the one you are becoming. Over time, your nervous system accepts that version as natural. You wake, and it is slightly easier to live it. This is how the sovereign self is formed. Not in one dramatic declaration, but in 1,000 quiet choices where you refuse to betray what you now know. Understand this clearly. You will be tempted to make this complicated. The mind that fears change loves complexity. It wants more techniques, more theories, more exceptions. It wants to say, perhaps this applies to others, but my situation is special. That is the last line of defense of the old self. Living as the sovereign self is the opposite of complication. It is beautifully, sometimes uncomfortably, simple. You choose who you are in consciousness. You align your self-talk, inner images, and reactions with that choice. You refuse to abandon it when outer evidence lags behind. You learn from each moment instead of using it to prove your weakness. You correct, not collapse. You persist until this way of being feels more natural than the old. And you do it all knowing that the power acting is not fragile, it is absolute. If these words strike something deep in you, that is not accident. It is your own deeper self calling you to stop living as a divided being, to stop commuting between faith and fear, to stop entertaining wisdom but practicing self-sabotage. You do not need permission to begin. You do not need a perfect past. You do not need a certain income, relationship, or environment. You need only one thing: willingness to treat your consciousness as the cause and your assumptions as sacred. So let this be your inner vow. From this day forward, I will no longer speak of myself as powerless. I will no longer glorify my limitations. I will no longer worship delay, rejection, or scarcity with my attention. I will use my imagination as the workshop of fulfilled states, not as a torture chamber of worst-case scenarios. I will let my desires unify into a clear identity. I will practice my pillars. I will guard my inner conversations. I will detach from what insults my nature. I will honor divine timing without surrendering my authority. I will focus my mind like the instrument it is. I will rise when I fall, without drama, because I know who rises. If you choose this path, you will not walk it alone. Every time you return to this message, every time you listen, study, and apply, you are reinforcing a field of consciousness shared by countless others who are also stepping into authorship. Stay close to this work. Surround yourself with messages that remind you of your nature. Feed what strengthens your sovereignty. On this channel, that is the purpose: to call you back again and again to the truth of who you are and show you, step by step, how to live it. If what you are hearing aligns with that truth in you, commit to this space. Subscribe, remain with the teachings that require you to practice, not just applaud. In the end, no voice, no mentor, no video can live this for you. The final exhortation is simple and total. Live as the sovereign self, or do not, but do not drift half awake. You now know that your consciousness is the script, the stage, and the casting director of your reality. Honor that knowledge. Let your days bear witness that you understood. Let your relationships, your work, your health, your inner peace carry the fragrance of someone who has taken ownership of their inner world. And when you forget, as human beings do, return quickly. Do not waste time in shame. The sovereign self is not the one who never stumbles. It is the one who always remembers. The power is within, and it is mine to direct. If this message has reminded you of who you truly are, let this not be where it ends. Subscribe to this channel and join the circle of those who have decided to live consciously, courageously, and deliberately. Every new teaching here is built to deepen your mastery, sharpen your faith, and remind you again and again that you are the operant power. Stay connected, stay awake, and let your sovereignty lead the way.